So I do actually have some good news. I'm actually moving house.
Oh wow,
So
that was
you know,
quick.
obviously, yeah. So been looking for a new house, and it means that if I've got an office in there, if I lay it out correctly, I actually have room for a racing sim rig, which is pretty cool. And when I say racing sim rig, I mean a old car chair, sort of attached to a racing wheel with a bit of wood and a monitor sat in front of it. It's going to be hillbilly as anything, but there we go.
Got to start somewhere.
Got to
At
start
least you got one in
somewhere.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Started from the bottom, and now we're here, aren't we, Yuki? Mr. Points finally almost broke the record for most amount of 11th places in a row. Speaking of
Yeah,
Formula One,
Crofty was loving that.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of Formula One, welcome to the 107 podcast with myself, Jacob, and my co-host Anish. Today we will be covering quite frankly, the Grand Prix that was completely upside down, turned on its head 3 times in actuality, and that is, of course, the Australian Grand Prix for 2023. Bit of a mad one, right?
Again, it's like we always say on this podcast, it's usually what happens off the track that's more drama than what happens on the track.
True, true, very
So
true. Um,
yeah, it's opened up lots of conversations about when should red flags be used and are they
mhm.
prioritizing entertainment over sport?
Should we circle back to that question and give our own opinion as to what we think red flags should be under
Yeah.
certain conditions? Because I have my own opinions, and I'm sure you do too. We're not going to cover quali this week because there's a lot to talk about in terms of the actual race, and we might be a bit stuck for time. The one thing I will say is Perez battling from the back was pretty interesting to see. Exactly like last week in I was going to say Baku. Wrong.
Jeddah.
Exactly like last week in Jeddah, obviously Max was doing the same thing. But it was just interesting to see, I think.
Yeah. The only thing we'll say for qualifying is the Mercs seem to be, finding what's wrong with their car and fixing it. So hopefully,
I
because they've done it early in the season, it's only up from here, not like Brazil last year where it's like, oh, it was a one-off.
Yeah, I have some things to say about that, so I think we'll get to that when we can.
Cool. So should we start with Red Bull? Max wins. Pretty uneventful for him by the start, and Sergio makes his way through into fifth.
Yeah, I would argue as well for the Red Bulls. This was like, especially the last red flag. If you're Max, you don't particularly care. You really
Yeah.
don't, because you're like, well, I'm going to win anyway, so
Yeah.
just doesn't really bother me. So I think for him, it was a reasonably easy race. He managed his pace very well. The supposed rumors around Red Bull holding back and not using their car to their full potential so they don't get penalized by the FIA or like cut back or whatever is I think a little bit extreme. And I think that if the FIA were to actually do something about it, especially considering that Mercedes had dominance for what, 8 years? Was it 8 years?
2014 to 2022,
Yeah, so it's
2021.
7 years constructors. No, 8 years.
Eight constructors.
Eight
Seven
constructors. Yeah.
drivers.
So with their domination, 8 constructors in a row, which has never been done before. I think unless it gets to that level with Red Bull, the FIA stepping in and changing rules or changing regulations halfway through purely just to impact that Red Bull is shameful. But
Yeah.
I mean, the FIA are shameful in all honesty in various different aspects of Formula One anyway. So I wouldn't put it past them. But yeah, very easy race for Max, and then obviously Checo coming through the field was very, very good. Some effortless overtakes on everyone, bar honestly Lando seemed to put up a bit of a fight, which was unexpected in the orange tractor, which also I guess we can lead into McLaren as well. Double points was not expecting that whatsoever. I guess the cakes from Piastri's grandma really is a good luck charm. I guess Piastri's grandma versus Red Bull catering team is going to be the battle I didn't know I wanted to see this year. But yeah, no, incredible for the team. I think obviously it was massively affected by the amount of DNFs and stuff that the race had. But I will always take double McLaren points for sure, especially when you hadn't scored a single point at all for the first 2 races.
Yeah, just going back to Red Bull, I think the only incident that Max really had was his small battle with Lewis at the start, where he claims Lewis
Yeah,
pushed him
true.
off,
Yeah.
Which, looking at it, I think it's the start of the race, kind of half a dozen of one,
Yeah,
six of the other. But
for
you
me,
know what?
it's just
Max and Lewis have been
aggression.
doing that for the past couple of seasons, so
Yeah,
it's maybe the shoes on the other foot this time for Max.
true. I think it was just, aggressively holding his line. He probably should have given him a little bit more space, but it's a racing incident. He just squeezed him. It wasn't. I don't think there was anything bad about the move from Lewis. To be completely honest, I don't think there really was anything in
Pretty
it.
fair, hard
Pretty
racing.
fair, yeah.
If I'm Max and he did this, it's like, look, I've got the fastest car. Just let him get ahead of me. I'll overtake him soon, and pretty much did that.
If it's the other way around as well, Lewis would also complain, and nothing would get done about it either. So I mean, it is what it is, really.
Yeah, and then so you're talking about the McLarens.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of things been said about the car, but they just have had bad weekends, and this was the first weekend where things kind of got together.
Went reasonably well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the car's as much of a tractor as people make it out to be. Yeah, it's not the fastest on the grid, and I think they may have probably taken a bit of a step back from last season. But again, it's early in the season. Piastri is showing real pace in that car, and he's doing well. And big up to him for getting points at his home race. So, yeah, Papaya's getting oranger.
Moving on up, I guess, which is obviously great to see for me, anyway. So.
You got to change that blue tint you have in your room to orange.
Yeah, it's only blue because I guess it's quite late at night, but yeah, pretty much.
Cool. First podium for Lewis, and George really unlucky because his strategy, his pace, could he have held on for the win? I don't think so, not against Max, but I thought he could have done really well, and it was just bad luck for him when he pitted on the safety car that turned into a red flag, and then the PU went. I really do feel for him.
When there's a question around Mercedes and like a technical DNF, that's pretty rare. So I think that it's just very unlucky for George. He didn't do anything wrong, and then a series of unfortunate events just took him down a peg and then killed him off, essentially. But he did pretty well, while he was driving the car, while the car was actually going. And then, it turned into a Honda from the 90s and just exploded. Essentially, it's just,
That it is rare for a technical DNF. I'm just wondering, do you think that they may be pushing the engine a little bit more?
That's a good question, actually.
Normal?
I hadn't thought about that.
Because obviously we saw Ferrari last year had to turn it down for reliability issues, and they're like, look, let's see what speed we can get out of it. And we may have to deal with some engines blowing up, but that could be a reason why they're kind of stepping up in pace.
Maybe. I think for Mercedes, let's be honest, that car isn't as bad as they say it is. It just isn't, right?
It isn't.
The difference is that just the Aston Martin and the Red Bull are just so much quicker. That is literally the difference. There's not much else.
I wouldn't even say that Aston Martin is that much quicker.
Well, based on this weekend, no, not really.
Alonso's out-qualified by both Mercedes, and Lewis put up a great fight to keep P2. I do think the fight would have happened had the red flags and safety car not come out. I think Alonso is managing his tires right, attack, save, and the deg on the Aston is a lot better than Mercedes. But it does seem like the battle for P2, P3, and P3 in the constructors between Aston Martin and Mercedes is going to be quite competitive this season.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, but then again, you've got to bring Ferrari into that at some point. They've just been incredibly unlucky, I think, so far.
Yeah, that's true. You can't forget about the prancing horse.
Nope.
My boy Charles,
he's super unlucky. But then I saw quite a few memes around, like people saying that Charles is trying his best to DNF the same races that Verstappen DNF'd.
So that incident with Lance, it was just coming together. There's nothing Lance could do.
Yeah, it is what it is, really. And then
in the gravel.
It wasn't even a case of if he'd have carried more momentum in, it probably wouldn't have changed things. It probably would have been almost exactly the same.
I think the 3 weeks off is actually going to be good for Charles. I think he needs a break. Just needs to right. That's what happened. Not doing that well. Just let me reset, relax. Hit the sim, and then he generally does okay towards the middle part of the season as well. So yeah.
He's not.
I hope he just takes that time, relaxes, and just gets back on, because we know the talent is there.
Yeah,
and he's still young as well.
His record at Baku isn't the best though.
I am stupid. Stupid.
I mean, his record just isn't the best at Baku. So I think next race week will be interesting.
That's if we do predictions. I reckon Charles will be on the podium at Baku. The way it's going, he didn't win Australia, which he won last season. Didn't win Bahrain, which he won last season, which he totally messed up those races. So Baku, which he doesn't do well at, he's going to tear out. He's going to do well at it.
Yeah, he could potentially do well. I think it's Checo's to lose though.
No, I think Max is winning Baku.
I mean, you say that, but I mean, this is like Baku is one of the most dominant tracks for Checo, even before Red Bull picked him up.
Well, if you look, when was that? When was the race? Was it 2021? When Max was leading him and his car went. So
yeah,
had his car not gone, he would have won that race,
True.
I believe, and it wouldn't have looked so dominant.
If he'd have won that race,
yeah,
right, the championship wouldn't have come down to the final day, and we probably wouldn't have had the Abu Dhabi 2021 incident.
Yeah, but then that would mean that there was no red flag later on when Lewis messed up his brakes and all that. Because also Lewis was ahead in that first corner.
True.
They restarted and Sergio took the lead because he went off. So, we know Sergio is good at street circuits. I think the Azerbaijan one is a little bit favoured towards him. Because
it's those 90-degree corners, rear limited corners, which he seems to be pretty bloody good at, and he saves his tyres. So I mean. I think that's where. Yeah, I think that obviously Matt, like you could put a decent amount of money on Max to win, and you'd probably be fine. But I just have a feeling that Checo is just gonna bite back almost after the last couple of races. I just have a funny feeling that he'll do pretty well.
All right. Well,
but we are talking about a race that happens in like 3 weeks' time. Should we go back to Australia?
Aston Martin.
Yes.
3 and 4. Good for Lance. He deserves a good result like that, and I reckon we'll see him on the podium soon.
I hope so.
Fernando,
yeah,
I think he was a little bit unlucky with the red flags, because I think he could have put more of a fight on against Lewis. But hats off to Lewis for doing a good job. And also, you just can't take P3 away from Fernando. Last race is like, okay, no, George was there. It's like, no, Fernando's there now. And this one is like, no, we're going back to what happened at Silverstone, or the set rules. And, you crashed out, but we're going to go back to the result it was.
I mean, the fact that he was able to come up with that, like, instantly was ridiculous. It was just like Silverstone, you have to restart in this position. And I was like, how the hell did he just immediately come up with that? Admittedly, I did have a similar thought, but I'm not trying to drive a car at 250 kilometers an hour type thing. So, yeah.
Now, are you gonna take off your Danish glasses? With
Why?
Nico Hulkenberg in P7, could have got P3.
He could have, and
just really is dominating K-Mag at the start of the season.
Yeah, I think he is. In all honesty,
considering he's had a year off as well.
Do you remember what I said when I talked about he has up until Britain to score points in order to prove why he was brought into the team over Mick, and he did it literally the next week. Brilliant. I can't really fault Nico whatsoever. I do question whether or not, because obviously Magnussen came back after being a year out and had an incredible first couple of races and then completely dropped off the radar. So, well, not completely dropped off the radar, but like he seemed to have like the first couple of races were really, really good for him. And then he sort of dropped off a little bit. So I'm wondering whether or not the same will happen to Nico. Not trying to defend Kevin whatsoever. But I'm just asking the question.
Putting on these tinted glasses.
Yeah, putting on the Danish glasses. But one thing I do have, like one question I do really have around Kevin and his sort of performance was that I don't really think that the crash was his fault. I think that he just got sun in his eyes and didn't know exactly where the car was on the road. Could have happened to any of the drivers. It's just very unfortunate that it happened to him, really, in that race. Anyway.
Yeah, unlucky, but no, good on Nico for that result.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Cannot knock it whatsoever.
He just can't get his podium, can he?
No. Literally taken away from him.
Alfa Romeo, Zhou P9, Bottas P11.
Yes.
I remember our predictions at the start of the season. I said Zhou was going to outscore Bottas.
You did, yes.
And he, for a second, he's doing well. He's doing well, Zhou. What's happened to Bottas? He just doesn't seem to be gelling with the car just yet. And, I hope he does. He's a quick driver, but, he's got to be up there with his teammate.
This isn't accusatory. This is more of a general sort of question. But do you think that Bottas, because of, he knows he's not in a race-winning car, he knows he's in a midfield car, do you think maybe, especially with all of the stuff that's going on in his personal life right now, he's just moved to Australia or like spending a lot more time in Australia, he's doing like loads more like coffee bits and pieces and brand deals, and he seems to be sort of relaxing and stuff a little bit now. Do you think that he's potentially taking his eye off the ball?
No, I don't know. I think he's just being smart in setting himself up for the future.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think, coming from Mercedes, I don't think he would have gone to Alfa Romeo if his heart wasn't in racing, because like he could leave and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
It
was just a question. It was just a thought. Yeah. He's been doing a lot of stuff in his personal life. Could that be, he's maybe, focused a little bit like somewhere else, or I don't know. Just asking the question.
No, I think he's 100% focused. He's just not gelling with the car. Hopefully he will. But even then, I still think Zhou's going to outscore him over the season.
Right.
So, yeah, no, I don't think so, because like if you look at other drivers, like Lewis is doing his like his fashion stuff, and he's always out and about doing like music and other stuff. So yeah, I think these guys can switch it on and switch it off, when they need to. And even if you look at Max, if he's not in the car, he's sim racing, like doing 24 hours.
True,
of Le Mans and stuff like that.
That's very related to driving, whereas Bottas, doing stuff with like a gin company or a coffee company isn't exactly as related.
Even then, I just think he's just probably got people doing it for him.
Yeah. I'm not saying that he's sat there, setting up companies and blah 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 on his own.
No, I think he is 100% focused. He's just not gelling with the car just yet. And
it could just be that it's not suited to his driving style.
Yeah.
You never know.
So, 100%. AlphaTauri, Yuki, P10. Yuki!
Finally.
And Nick De Vries, P15. I think he got hit by Logan Sargent at like the third red flag.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he got completely... You can see it in your background. You can actually see him being clarted by the American missile over there. I think that AlphaTauri has disappointed me a little bit in terms of its pace this season. I would have liked to have seen it be a little bit more pacey, to see what Yuki and Nick push for points.
It might just be me, but I also just don't like the look of the car. If I see it on screen, it reminds me of an F2 car. I don't know what it is.
I think it's because the blue doesn't go with the red.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It's not nice.
No.
It just isn't.
The Alpines, Pierre was doing really well. Esteban made some good moves, but that red flag incident.
I told you, I wanted drama. I wanted them to hit each other. When they hit each other, when I worked out that they hit each other, I was like, yeah, maybe something will happen. Maybe there'll be a big argument, but then it wasn't.
So they called it a racing incident. What are your thoughts? Do you think, I think we agree Esteban was the innocent party in this, right?
Yeah, Pierre definitely squeezed him into the wall.
Yeah.
But for me, it's 50-50. I
think it's one of those things where when you come off the track and you come back on, you're going to lose that initial bit of grip. There's a chance where you might have to catch a slide, and that could affect.
Your tires
car.
are dirty, and
so I mean, if he doesn't hit Esteban, it's okay. But unfortunately, he did, and unfortunately, it was a teammate. I think it harkens back to. This shouldn't derail us. Maybe it's an episode for another time with the whole Sebastian and Lewis incident at Canada.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't know why people even argue this. Maybe because they loved Seb in that era. Seb came on the track, lost control of the car, pushed Lewis into a wall. That's done and dusted penalty. So, yeah, it was similar to that.
You know my opinion on this.
Well, I'm not talking opinion, man. I'm talking facts. All right.
Yeah,
but we'll talk about it another time. We can go on that. That's it was very similar to that. And
we have 3 podcasts worth of content to find over the next couple of weeks, so I'm sure we can talk about that sort of era. I think that Pierre. It was Pierre's fault. Yeah. He didn't give Ocon enough space to go into, but it was a racing incident.
Yeah, and I think had they blamed Pierre and they could have given him penalty points, I think he would have had a race.
He would have had a race ban.
Yeah. And I think this will segue into the red flag topic. But Williams, Alex did really well in qualifying.
Yep.
Could have got some points, but unfortunately, I think he may have just touched the grass going into the turn, which kind of put his car out of sync.
Yeah, I think
he went in.
It's super unlucky, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Williams is just going to get better and better throughout the season, and they'll be consistently scoring points. And good on Albon for getting into Q3. I think Logan's shown flashes of pace.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does throughout the season. But,
so I feel like Logan's still getting used to the car. Like he's slightly off his braking points. He's slightly off the racing, like the race pace, that sort of stuff. And obviously, especially he was up against Lando in that quali round where Lando got the same time as him but got it in earlier. He's been very unlucky, and he is still a rookie. And obviously Alex is more used to that car. Although obviously we should, be talking about Australia, I actually think that Baku could be a place where that Williams picks up a couple of points purely because of its straight line speed. We already know the Williams always seems to have decent straight line speed. So Albon could potentially grab some points there looking forward. And I think you're right, the Williams should and hopefully will get quite a bit better throughout the season. However, Williams have actually been the most consistent team compared to last year. Yes, so after round 3, the Williams team had 1 point last year, and after 3 rounds this year, they have 1 point. So technically, the key to success is consistency down at Williams.
Yeah, so Albon has a crash, puts gravel onto the track. Initially, it's a safety car, and then it gets turned into a red flag. So first red flag incident. Should that have been a red flag?
So apparent for me, I think it was.
So take away, like you're running FI sports and entertainment. There's gravel on the track. That's happened with Alex. It's in Australia. It's at that part of the track. You're the race director. What are you doing?
For me, I'm putting in a safety car. For me personally. And would just essentially then assess the strength of the barrier would be one of the things that I would look at, because obviously he did take quite a big impact into that barrier, and obviously he came back on track, and so I think that part of the reason why that was a red flag is because there was lots of carbon fibre or bits of carbon fibre spread across the track, which obviously could have caused punctures more so than the gravel. So I think that's why there was a red flag. And I think for me, it's 50-50. It's on the fence. It could, for me personally, I probably would have just said, right, safety car, let's try and get this cleaned up. Can we check the Tech Pro? Can we check everything? Blah, 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 blah. But obviously, there it could have been a safety car for let's call it 6 laps. Just to pull a number off the top of the head, right? If it's a safety car for 6 laps, or you could just red flag it because you're not 100% sure. The barrier took a bit of a hit. There's debris all over the track, not just gravel. The red flag seemed like the not safest option, but just the option that potentially could make more sense in that moment. Because then having cars come around with punctures and stuff like that, especially because the field at that point was a little bit spaced out as well, it could have taken maybe 1 or even 2 laps for everyone to get to the right positions, and people were pitting as well during the safety car as well. So I think that's also part of the reason why it wasn't like it wasn't the best idea to carry on with a safety car and potentially just red flag it, even if it did take longer to red flag it than it should have done. That's just my opinion. But I don't know. What do you think? Like I said, for me, it's 50-50.
No, I think the FIA were right in what they did. I think, initially a safety car, and they said, well, actually not. There's too much gravel. There's too much debris. Let's red flag it. Let's clear it up, because it's going to take a while to clear it up. We're just going to lose lap after lap after lap. So let's red flag it, get it all cleared properly. There's no pressure. You don't want marshals making mistakes and things like that. And then, get the race going. So I actually do agree with how the FIA did the first red flag.
Yeah.
And then the second red flag, which was K-Mag hitting the wall. The wheel rim kind of bits of that was going everywhere. I think it actually hit a spectator.
Yes, so I can give you a little bit of background on that for those of you who don't know. Essentially what happened was, as he hit the wall, a bit of carbon fibre flew up and over the catch fence and actually hit a guy on his arm and cut his arm open. And he got help by the medical team and stuff like that, and he was actually a Kevin Magnussen fan as well, which is pretty ironic. But
for K-Mag.
But the unfortunate thing is that some bastard stole the bit of carbon fiber that hit him. So he didn't even get to keep the bit of carbon fiber that actually hit him, which is quite bad, to be completely honest with you. Like, if I'm injured by a Formula 1 car, I'm going to want to keep that part, So
I hope the Haas Formula 1 team looks after him.
So I believe that the Australian Grand Prix team have started to reach out to him to try and sort something. Whether or not that's giving him the wheel that got smashed or something like that, whatever it is. I hope that they sort something. I'll keep an eye out on social media and see if I spot anything. But that was the story essentially. He was helped by the medical team and he was absolutely fine, no issues at all. He just had a bit of a cut on his arm and that's about it.
So red flag for you?
I want to say yes. Because of this for me, I think if you compare it to the last red flag, part of the reason for me why I would have red flagged it is because of the debris on the track, which was obviously carbon fiber, which will give you lots of punctures. This debris was spread all over the track in the second red flag incident, and it obviously again could have caused punctures, etc., etc. There wasn't a clear line. It wasn't like he just dragged himself get up against one side, almost like a burnout grinding takedown type thing. He didn't only end up on one wall. He literally span himself completely all over the track. Well, not spun himself, but spread himself across the track. And it reminded me a little bit of the Mick Schumacher incident last year in Jeddah, where he sort of hit the wall and then dragged himself further and further down the track, and there was just debris everywhere. Similar-ish situation. Obviously, the K-Mag one wasn't as serious. Mix was a pretty big shunt, but it was that sort of situation again where there's debris everywhere. It's just easier to red flag it. So again, I do agree with the red flag for that one for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they said the reason that they gave was those parts of the forged rim being on the track. So we saw what it did to a spectator. You don't want, even though they're going on safety car speeds, you don't want that getting picked up by, a car flinging backwards and hitting someone. So, yeah, I agree. And then, the third red flag, which I think this is where the controversy comes in, because essentially it seems like they did the red flag, understandably so, and then wanted to get in 2 laps of racing. And when you are, fuck it, it's 2 laps. Let's just go for it at turn 1. We haven't got the entire race to try and make up spaces. Carlos Sainz, which I think the timing of this penalty was really bad. It's got a 5-second penalty. Let's be as close as we can to him, because he's going to be moving back.
Yeah.
And you get what happens, which is that extreme carnage in turn 1 and 2.
Well,
which
no,
results in
the penalty was applied after that turn, after that,
no.
wasn't it?
So that's what I mean is actually no, you're completely right. What am I talking about?
Yeah, I
Yes,
was
he
like,
got the
hold on a
penalty.
minute.
I just felt yeah, sorry, I was confused, but I thought it was unfair because then it meant that loads of cars were super close to him.
Yeah.
And trying to keep that 5-second gap, which I thought
Yeah.
was a little bit unfair because it doesn't give him a chance to go back and
For
do anything
me,
about
it
it.
wasn't a time penalty.
I think they should have done what they do at every first lap incident and kind of be a little bit more lenient.
Exactly.
And I think, yeah, it was a little bit unfair, that penalty.
I think that the only reason why he actually had a penalty, because to me, Logan Sargent smashing into the back of Nick De Vries was worse, right?
Yeah.
The only reason why Carlos got a penalty was purely because his car was still in the race. That's it.
That's true.
That's literally it. If Carlos had taken himself out or had to retire for some reason, he wouldn't have got a penalty. It's as simple as that. And yes, I know that obviously, the punishment, like there's no point in punishing somebody who, crashed out and, there's not much point because a time penalty isn't going to affect them. But at the same time, like I think that retroactively, maybe you need to have a conversation with Logan Sargent if you're handing out penalties for what Carlos did, to be completely honest with you. Especially considering that, last race in Jeddah, he wasn't even quick enough. He didn't even set a quick quali time. So, I mean, I know he's a rookie, etc., blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But, like, you've got to look at got to take that into account at the very least. And yeah, for me, I think that it was very, very harsh to give him a penalty. I think at the very least, it could have, and the Stewards very easily could have done this. They could have said that the incident will be reviewed after the race. They could have had a conversation with him.
That's what they should have done.
Yeah,
that's what they should have done.
But yeah,
just to give him that penalty straight away like that, I thought that was very unfair, and they should have investigated it at the end of the race.
Yeah, I feel like it should have been a thing that they investigated after the race. However, I think it would have been something that they investigated after the race if last week Alonso hadn't been given a penalty after the race had finished because he was still under investigation. So they shot themselves in the foot last week by setting that precedent and then letting everyone, take the mick out of them out on social media, so that now they're trying to give penalties before the end of the race, and they shoot themselves in the foot again. Like, I know that what they're trying to do, but at the same time, like, that was an incident that, you could have just dealt with after the race, especially because the lap didn't even exist.
Yeah, I think that it's like technically it happened on a lap that didn't
even exist. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I was saying before I had my brain fart, if the guy in front of you has got a 5-second penalty and you're going round behind the safety car, I'm going to be as close to that person as possible. And the driver behind me is going to be as close to me as possible. And it's going to be as close to me. So
yeah, it creates dangerous situations, especially when you have fans on track.
Yes, and then the fans came on track. I mean, I think we should say we understand it's not a representation of Australian fans or anything like that.
I did think
a small handful.
I did. So on TV, you wouldn't have known this, and obviously, if you're, I don't know, living in a hole somewhere, you wouldn't have known because it was all over social media afterwards that people invaded the track while that last lap / cool down lap was actually happening.
They did mention it on the commentary.
Oh, I switched off, but,
we didn't really know and see what they were doing because they were literally climbing fences and squeezing through gaps. Anything can happen, right? We've seen incidents happen on formation laps, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All it takes is had a lock up or a bit of wheel spin, whatever it is, and the car goes sliding into the wall, sliding across and hits someone, hurts them, or kills them, right? You just never know.
You never know. Yeah, exactly. For me, it's quite bad.
It is very bad.
I don't blame the organisers though, personally. I think that there's only so much that you can do when you ask people to work security in events like this when they're probably, let's be honest, understaffed, massively outnumbered. There's only so much you can do. I don't entirely blame the event organisers. It's just people being idiots. I think that the more that what in the hell in Drive to Survive actually happened, essentially, was a lot of the memes that were going around on social media, because it is these very new casual fans who seem to have latched onto the sport that seem to be bringing it down for others, seemingly. And I know that's a big generalization, because obviously, Drive to Survive has done quite a bit of good for the sport as well. But it does seem to be those, like those football hooligan types that, they just want to go and create a bit of carnage or create a bit of mess. They want to steal one of the Rolex signs from the side of the road type thing. Like, it seemed like that sort of crowd that were actually maybe at the spearhead of it, from videos I saw on TikTok and tweets and stuff like that. And then because other people were on track, others were following them, which obviously isn't great. I'm all for having people go on track. When I go to the British Grand Prix, and I remember when we went to Austria last year, I said, do you want to go on track? And you were like, nah, because it'll take a couple of hours for us to even get off, etc., etc. Whatever, that's absolutely fine. But I'm going to the British Grand Prix on my own, and I really do hope that I get to go and have a little bit of a track walk, like at some point after the race is finished, because it's an experience, and I think that fans should be given the opportunity. I know in Spa you actually get to go onto the track. They open it up on or they did in the past. They didn't last year or the year before. Because of COVID, but they didn't open the track up last year either. But you could go and have a little bit of a walk around on the track, which I think is amazing.
There's something special about having fans on the track where the drivers are collecting the trophies,
especially in Monza.
Yeah, look at Monza, right? That is. So I'm totally, absolutely for it. And like you said, it was just some dickheads that just couldn't wait 5 minutes. Right, that was it. And it's just like, come on, man, come on.
I feel like it's some learnings for the Grand Prix Association. That's for sure.
And I think the organisers, the stewards kind of spoke to them, and FIA and FM spoke to them and said, look, we're going to take it on board and we'll make some changes and things like that. So I don't think it will happen next year, but can't have people on track, man. Can't have people on track.
No,
I mean, look, was it Hulkenberg's car stopped after turn 2, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What's to stop someone just running on, stealing stuff from that car, steering wheel, whatever. You know what people are like, right?
Yeah, you could steal the steering wheel, or it could even be that we saw it with, like, for example, in football, where somebody runs on and punches Jack Grealish in the face in a Birmingham Aston Villa game.
I don't know, someone could have just run after Nico Hulkenberg, and
you never know. I mean, Nico seems like a decent bloke. I highly doubt that would happen, but you just don't know. You just have no idea. So I think it is very dangerous, but also I think that actually thinking about it, and as I'm talking about it, maybe the Grand Prix organisers do have something to be accountable for, because do you not remember that last year Alex Albon pitted on the last lap because he went the entire way on hards and then pitted on the last lap so that he would have his registered pit stop, and there were fans in the pit lane because the event organisers have brought people out to start celebrating the podium, but they brought them out one lap too early. So there were actually people in the pit lane when Alex had pitted. So he was, pretty close to potentially, injuring somebody in the pit lane because the event organisers brought people out early. So actually maybe there is something there around, having people or having the organisers take a look at themselves, because they're not conducting things very safely. And one of the things that worries me as well around the safety is there's potentially talks around turning Australia into a night race, and then if you have fans potentially breaking onto the track at night, is even worse.
Just before we go on to that, are they doing it because it's like a spectacle under the lights, or are they doing it for time zone reasons?
So for me, I think it's both. I think that Australia has a contract until 2027, I believe. And I think that potentially, I remember what we were saying, because we were messaging each other a little bit during the race, and you said that, they can't cut Australia because they can't cut out essentially an entire region. And I completely agree with that. But in all honesty, this is the FIA. They very easily could, for zero reason.
FIA or FOM?
FOM, sorry.
FOM, yeah, cool.
And so my thing around that is that with with, older tracks, and Melbourne is a slightly older track, being taken off of the calendar, they've already improved the racing down there by, taking away that weird chicane halfway through the second sector. And then paired with the fact that Europeans, and I don't know what time it would have, meant that Americans were staying up to or waking up for, but it's an awkward time for Europeans. If you make it an evening race, so instead of it starting at 3, it starts at 7, if in Australia, they're pushing that back 3 or 4 hours, and then it becomes an 11 o'clock start for Europeans. That's much more appealing. And it's under the lights, so it makes it even more appealing to a wider fan base, not just Europeans. So I think it could be potentially a little bit of both. The threat of being removed off of the calendar, I think, is probably the biggest one, and also make it a spectacle and stuff like that. What I would actually quite like, and I think this would be a very good idea, is for them to actually say, "Hey, the sprint race will be under the lights. We're going to do a sprint race in Australia, and then the race will be normal."
Nah. I think
Why
the
not?
sprint race will be during the day because it's smaller. It's larger spectacle, more of an audience for the main race.
True, but not as many people tune in for the sprint races. So maybe
that's why
one
they'll do it
year.
during the day. No, that's why they'll do it during the day.
Well, maybe they would do it during the night so that Europe could tune in.
Nah. No way.
I think either or works, but I would like to see a day-night sprint normal race. I think that would be pretty interesting.
So, do we now want to talk about Azerbaijan? Because that's got a new format, hasn't it?
Yes, it does, but I would like to very quickly run back and talk about red flags.
Oh, okay, cool.
So, for red flags, you are looking, let's say, Mr. Ash, you are looking at the rules for red flags because of Backlash this race and then a Backlash whatever in a couple of races' time, etc., around red flags.
Okay.
When a red flag happens, do you think that there should be standing starts or rolling starts? Do you think that there should be allowed tyre changes or not? Or do you think there should be allowed tyre changes but that doesn't count towards your required pit stop? Or do you think that if you were to change tyres, you should start from the pit lane and then everyone else starts from the grid? What do you think? What do you think around red flags?
Okay, so your first question, should there be a standing or rolling start?
Yes.
I think there should be a standing start. Now,
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
Mhm.
Essentially, when you have just a safety car, it's a rolling start.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if it's red flag, it should be different. It should be standing start.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
In terms of tire changes, again, you're allowed to change tires and make repairs under the red flag. I think so because as a team, you gamble on the safety car,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it just adds more to the strategy. Where it's like, oh, could it be a safety car? Could it be a red flag? Do we bring them in? Do we not bring them in? I think it plays more into adding that excitement in terms
The spectacle.
of strategy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So that would be. I think the way it works right now, it does work. The reason why I think you shouldn't change it is because I think for some teams, well, actually for every team, if they know that they can make changes under the red flag and go back to previous positions, they're going to be calling for red flags when they're speaking to race control all the time, kind of thing. And we're going to have kind of like more red flags and safety cars because, hey, we can change it, we won't lose position, etc., etc. So I think it actually does work well at the moment, because otherwise it's going to be like, oh, it's a safety car, but we pitted and now it's a red flag, and then we can change, but we can go back. So let's push for a red flag and stuff like that. And yeah, I kind of think it works as it is at the moment, and absolutely keep standing starts because rolling starts will be under a safety car anyway.
Yeah, true. I think for me, red flags should probably stay pretty much the same.
Yep.
However, I think that if you are red flagging because, let's say for example, it's dry, right? And then all of a sudden it pisses it down with rain, and I don't know, I'm picking a driver at random, Zoo goes into the wall, right? Because whatever. There's debris on the track. Nobody has the right tires on. It's very, very unsafe for there to be a safety car out. You red flag the race because of safety or whatever, right? And so you change everyone onto wets or intermediates. Well, let's be honest, intermediates, because wets from Pirelli are absolute rubbish. So you change everyone onto intermediates, right? For me, if it's wet, it's a rolling start, and that's purely because, from a safety terms, like perspective, because of standing starts not being particularly great in the rain and also on colder tires, I think that rolling starts would work better from a safety perspective.
Okay, so if you're saying that it becomes super wet, right? Just they can even red flag it if there's just too much rain.
Yeah.
You can come in, wait until it dries out, but because the track is still soaking wet, we're not going to do a standing start because it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
And we'll do a rolling start.
Yeah. I just think that makes sense. That's what they did in Monaco a couple of last year. That's what they tried to do a couple of times in Belgium. And this and it works. Except at Belgium.
Right. And so do you think then, because obviously they have that option, and I think they have taken it a few times, that if it's the same for the race start, because I know usually race start is standing start, but if it's been super wet, we'll start behind the safety car and let them go, is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think if it's a red flag for I think they would do that anyway. Didn't they try that a few times in Belgium?
They did it at Monaco, but I don't think it's actually written in the rules specifically.
Okay.
I don't think so, but I'm not 100% sure. But that's the only thing. I might be, banging on about a rule which already exists.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
It inside
but that's
out,
the only thing, is that I would just, make sure that was an actual thing. And that, when there was a red flag because of extreme weather changes, whether or not it could even be that I don't think there would ever be one going from wet to dry. But if all of a sudden it's, absolutely bucketing it down, then if there's some red flag for some sort of reason, there's debris on track and it's going to take marshals even longer to clear it up, and you don't want to waste racing laps, red flag it and then try and get it back underway under the safety car, sort of rolling restart.
I guess just quickly touching on the red flags before we go into Baku, it's kind of like, I do feel for the FIA, because a lot of the anger and fury comes essentially from fans of a driver, of a team, right? So if you're an Alonso fan, you're going to be really angry if they continued the race and didn't red flag it because he's lost the podium, kind of thing. If Hamilton had got ahead of Verstappen and got into P1, and they're like, actually, no, we're going to go back to the lap before, you're going to be angry.
Mercedes would have, gone mental.
And actually, that's what Haas did, right? Because they were like, hey,
yes, they protested it. Yeah,
they protested it, and so this is really interesting. They protested it because they go, if you're following the precedent of the Silverstone, I think they go by the safety car lines. And it matched what happened in Silverstone. It's like, actually, we'd gone through the safety car lines, so Hulkenberg should have his position and the grid should be as it was. But what they did, and I kind of give credit to the FIA for this, was where the safety car lines are positioned in Australia is different to Silverstone. So it gives initiative for drivers to just like gun it, hit that safety car line. Doesn't matter what happens, because we're going to keep the position post that line. So if we take out anyone, it doesn't really, they'll probably get penalty, like maybe signs. It doesn't really matter, and it makes it quite unsafe. So they're like, in general fairness and safety, we did it by the sector. So hats off to the FIA for that. I'll give them that. So
do you think
a lot of it is, you got to look at it from a neutral point of view?
If let's say, for example, if Hulkenberg had made it to or through the first sector, which he was nowhere near doing, right? But let's say, for example, there was a crash behind and Hulkenberg had made it through the first sector before the session had been red flagged, and then it was red flagged. So you would have had Max first, then Alonso, then Hulkenberg in third, right?
Yeah.
Would you have allowed Hulkenberg to keep P3 or allowed Verstappen and Hamilton and Hulkenberg to keep their positions because they made it through the first sector, and then the rest of the grid was reset?
No, you can't do.
I'm just asking the question.
No, you can't do it 50% for one, 50% for the other. No,
true.
Wait.
Yeah.
No, it's got to be one rule for everyone, kind of thing. So no, I wouldn't have done that just because certain cars reached a certain point before others. No way.
Yeah,
So,
I'm just asking
okay.
the question because there is the argument that why should let's say for example if
Because
Lewis had overtaken
because
Verstappen.
it goes back to what the FI was saying before about safety. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm just going to dive bomb it. Hopefully, I don't get into an incident,
Yeah, true.
and it doesn't matter because I passed a line. I was in that position.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. No, I'm
Like
just
that.
asking the question. Just
Yeah, no, I don't
conversational
think so.
topic, mate.
No.
It's what podcasts are all about.
Yeah, no, and I'm giving you my answer, bro. No, the answer is
Right.
no. But yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah. So yeah, anything else red flag related?
No,
No.
not really. I think
I guess the consensus is the FIA did make the right decisions.
all three incidents were red flag incidents.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think, again, like people are looking back. I do find it funny that those red flag incidents and trying to finish the race under racing conditions happened when a certain Michael Massey was visiting.
Yes. Actually, I'd like to touch on that very briefly. Very, very briefly. I feel as though Ted from the Sky Sports team, some of his comments were pretty unprofessional. I understand that he's still pretty hurt and pretty offended from what happened in Abu Dhabi, but in all honesty, grow up. Like I'm not being funny. Just grow up. Like it's happened. It's in the past.
Yeah.
Massey is looking at. It's not like Massey has ever been banned from the paddock, or banned from the FIA offices, or banned from Formula One. He was, asked to leave, /pushed out, /resigned himself. I mean, whatever it is, he left. He's now looking after the Australian V8 racing series. He had every right to be there. Ted also made a very weird comment about, it's interesting how he's, saying hello to everyone, but not the Mercedes guys. Okay.
Yeah, like it was
grow up. Grow up.
It was over a year ago. Everyone's moved on. Just it is what it is. It happened. It's done. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we could go into it. We're not going to bring it up, but it's in the past.
Yeah, done. Exactly. I think for me that somebody potentially needs to have a word with Ted. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people as well on social media be like, why is this guy still banging on? I understand it is arguably one of the most controversial things that has ever happened in Formula One. And it literally did. Think, yeah. Oh, even in sports, yeah. And it literally did change the landscape of, the actual championship. It cost, Mercedes versus Red Bull. It cost them millions of dollars in prize money. It cost, Hamilton probably had a clause in his contract that meant he got $5 million if he won the championship or whatever it is. There were probably so many different factors involved that, it absolutely changed. But at the same time, for him to be that bitter about it so long afterwards and so snide is just not great. It's not a good look for him.
No, because two reasons. One, Sky Sports I know are British, but essentially they should have some neutrality in the sport and be fair to all the drivers, team principals, and everyone involved in Formula One. And the second thing, it's just not, like you said, it's just not professional. And Ted has a lot of we don't watch Ted for that, right? He has a lot of backstage access and insider knowledge. It's like that's why with the notebook, this is what happened to that team, and he knows that's like I'm not here to have people whinge and moan about stuff that's happened a while back, but. It's done. We'll draw a line under it. It's in the past.
Yeah.
Baku. New. Let's go to Baku.
I've just because I wasn't quite done. I was just gonna say if you replace Ted with any other presenter to do the exact same job, I'm not overly bothered. Yeah. That's the thing. He doesn't offer anything completely unique.
Could it be you?
Hello, Mr. Sports.
What was it? The first episode?
The first episode, I bashed Sky, not Sky Sports
when
specifically.
The money comes in, all of a sudden.
If the money's there, we don't care. No, I still don't like Sky as a company. I am not a big fan of the stuff that they do. The content that they provide for Formula One is absolutely excellent. However, the service and the price of the service and their customer service and the way they go about business is not for me whatsoever.
Right, Baku.
Yes, Baku.
Okay, Baku. 3 weeks time.
Friday
will be FP1.
It will be.
And Grand Prix qualifying.
Very strange way round to do it, but yes.
Saturday will be sprint race qualifying and the sprint race. Sunday will be the Grand Prix. Is what I'm thinking as well. I understand it in a concept. It makes sense, right? We want to separate the sprint race from the main race, right? Have its own qualifying, have its own race, and it doesn't affect the main race. I'm kind of on the fence, and I need to see it in action to see. Oh, actually, you know what? It actually does work, and I think a lot of people just jump the gun and go angry and stuff. Like, they have to try these things first, right? You won't know if it works or not until you try it. So
yeah,
okay, if they're going to bring sprint races in, and there's been a bit of negativity towards that from drivers and from fans, okay, we'll change it up. That could be the answer. Could not be the answer. We'll see in 3 weeks' time. But I do like the fact that they're separating the sprint race from the main race. That's a good change.
Yeah. Yes and no. Yes and no. So for me, I personally would have kept in a second practice.
Okay.
I think that the quali for the sprint race should have happened on the Friday, right? And then you go in and you have the sprint race on the Saturday, right? And then I would have had a free practice session between the sprint and the race, because the way that you set up your cars is going to be completely different. If you're treating them as separate races, you should set up your cars in separate ways and have a free practice in order to do so and in order to learn exactly how things work and what happens. Personally, that's my only thing. I might be completely off base. The teams might be able to, get as much data as they need in this one free practice session first. Personally, I would have trialed this at a different race event, maybe a more traditional track that maybe it would have been easier to set up cars and stuff like that. Or you make that first free practice session much longer. So instead of it being an hour, you give them an hour and a half so that they can play around with the setup and stuff like that. That's the only other thing that I would have done. And I think that obviously would be the easier one to do in terms of, the amount of running that you'd actually have to do on a Saturday if you included a free practice session on a Saturday as well. Then you extend the free practice session on the Friday. I think either or would work. The second option would work better as I'm talking through it. But I think a little bit more time would have been preferred, I'm going to go with.
I think if organisation is no issue, Thursday, FP1, FP2.
Yeah.
And then Friday, FP3 Grand Prix qualifying. And then Saturday, sprint race qualifying, sprint race.
Yeah.
And Sunday, Grand Prix.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
And then, for me as well, the sprint race, I think... I'm not the biggest fan of sprint races. So, and I would explain that very quickly in terms of all it does is it means that when you do quali for the sprint race traditionally, if you say, for example, are Kevin Magnussen and you've qualified first somehow in Brazil, absolutely unreal. And then the sprint race you drop down to, where was it, 6th or 7th or something like that. He picked up a point, I think, or maybe 2, right? He then obviously has the life sort of sucked out of him because he drops down even further during the Grand Prix. Now, what they've done in separating the sprint race from the actual race is brilliant, so that wouldn't have happened. However, I don't think it incentivized teams in the right way. Plus, for sprint races, you do not get a point for fastest lap. There is no point for a fastest lap. For me, that's criminal. Because if you're maybe a slower team, like let's call it like Williams or something like that, I highly doubt that Williams are going to get fastest lap, but they could. If you're back of the grid, right? Let's say you're AlphaTauri, but if you run like a super low grade or like low fuel load, and then second to last lap you pit for softs and you just go for it, there's the chance that you could get fastest lap, right? that makes things a bit interesting. That brings pit stops into these sprint races as well. Just something as simple as awarding a fastest lap would literally make it game changing. For me personally, I think that would actually help, bring something else to sprint races. Or having a specific sprint race compound tyre for the sprint races, I think could also make it potentially interesting as well. Because
That's a good shout,
then everyone's on the same tyre. I think that like some cars would be affected more, some cars would be affected less. Even if they just set a specific sprint compound, they say softs, you have to start on softs. Then you can do whatever. You can pit lap 1 for hards, or you can go all the way and then pit on, if there's 20 laps, you can pit on lap 19 for mediums or whatever. A specified tyre for sprint races would also be pretty good. And also they're going a third of race distance as well, and only the top 8 drivers actually score points. So if you are, let's say, for example, one of those Alpha Tauris, what incentive do you have to push it to the max and risk the car? There's nothing. Like there's nothing to fight for. It's boring.
Yeah, I think that last point is the most profound one. It's like if you're not in the top teams, it's just like why? What's the
what
point?
Are we doing here? It's just
we can't run differently on strategy. We can't do this. We can't do that because in 20 laps it'll be over.
Look at Williams. They're not even at budget cap, and you're now telling them that they've got to waste. Let's call it, I don't know how much it is. I'm pulling a number out of nowhere, but they've got to waste $100,000 that weekend on a sprint race that does nothing for them. It's just procedural. They just have to do it.
Because you get prize money for points, and they're like, we're just not even an opportunity to get into the top 8 kind of thing.
I think there's the argument for reverse grids, maybe, but that would cause a lot of chaos potentially. Or like you could have the top 10 flipped. That could be interesting as well. I don't really know. You could have the top 10 and the bottom 20 flipped. So you've got the slowest cars in the middle, and then you've got the medium fast cars at the front.
The only thing is,
I don't know.
Like, because they've split up qualifying, so you couldn't do that. Because at least if it was like qualifying, the sprint race is your qualification for the main race. Otherwise, like, so what's the point of going out if it's a reverse grids? We'll just stay in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I think regardless of whatever, I think them introducing the point for the fastest lap would change some things.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Think about it. Does it hurt anyone?
No.
If you really wanted to as well, I know that this potentially
possibly
goes...
a fan getting on a lap early.
Yeah, maybe.
Through those barriers. And Yuki's just gutting it.
Yuki's just going for it. He's absolutely, like 297 kilometers an hour down the main straight. But for me as well, you could even mix it up, and this could go against the the philosophy for how points are scored and stuff like that. But there's been talk a couple of times about a point for the fastest pit stop. If you awarded a point for the fastest pit stop during a sprint race, it would actually get people to pit during a sprint race, especially if there's a specified compound for the sprint race.
My only issue, and I think this will happen if things go the way in the future, is the sprint race. So 2 things. The sprint race decides the champion before the race happens, which will be really annoying and kind of underwhelming. And let's just say you're first and second, equal points, and you're like, we're second, let's pit. Because if we get the quickest pit stop, we've got a point. And then
we get fastest lap, and we've scored 9 points instead of 8. And who was in first?
It just kind of takes away from winning the race if that's how you can get points. Kind of.
True, but then I think that the points should be revisited. Max Verstappen,
champion of the world, as he exits the pits with a 1.96 second pit stop.
I don't know. I think that like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of sprints. It doesn't do a lot for me. All it does is it just softens the race. Previously, what it does is it softens the race. I don't know. Maybe that there needs to be some sort of incentive for those lower down
100%.
Teams. Because, like I said, if you're Logan Sargent, again, and this sounds like I'm maybe picking on him, but I'm just using him as an example. In the last few races, he's not done particularly well in terms of he's not scored a point yet, right? So more than likely, he's going to be at the back of the grid again in Baku. So what incentive does he have to send it into turn 3 to potentially get up the side of Yuki Tsunoda and finish the sprint race 17th instead of 18th?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point. Just drive around at the back safely. It doesn't matter. It just does not matter. Like I said, for sprint races, the idea or the premise of having 2 races in a weekend, sure, that's absolutely fine. But make it mean something.
That's it. It's got to mean something. And at this moment in time, it doesn't. But,
it could even be, and I know this is potentially getting into like the whole like bogey laps or whatever it is. It could potentially be that if you, I don't know, if you have the most overtakes during a sprint race, you get 5 hours extra wind tunnel time or something. Like, I know that is completely and utterly stupid, and as it came out of my mouth, even I was like, what the hell are you saying? But there needs to be some incentive for these slower back market teams.
You've got to be fighting for something. And in a sprint race, very few people are fighting for something.
Yeah. So because there's only 8 people who score points, and I know there's only 2 less than on a Sunday, but still, it's just not good.
Yeah. No, totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, even if you were just to say, like, right, so first place gets 10, second is 9th, 8, and so on, and then 10th gets 1 point, almost exactly like it does in the race. Like, even if you just were to extend it to 10 people actually scoring points on a Saturday, then that could even be a slight improvement for me. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But like I said, just incentivize those slower teams, because it's not going to do a lot.
No,
it's really not.
No, I totally agree with you. But yeah, we'll find out in 3 weeks' time how it goes.
We absolutely will. For your Baku predictions, what are you saying in terms of pole sitters and not pole sitters, podium, top of the podium?
Verstappen, Perez, and I'm gonna go with Lance Stroll in third.
Okay, I'm going Perez, Verstappen, Alonso.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out.
We will. And speaking of,
quickly check our fantasy teams before.
Yeah, we can try and do that. One thing that I would like to mention is the fact that, I don't know if you saw on our Instagram, there was a certain dog who predicted the results.
If Bucky is not on this podcast in the next few seconds,
I can bring him in. Let me check the.
If I ever do one at my parents' house, I will bring Elsa in. But she is a cat and she has an attitude. So.
Amazing. But he predicted it, and he predicted it wrong, like a loser. So he will now be turned into a pair of gloves, I guess. That would be pretty helpful for me. His head is very soft, so he'd make a good pair of gloves, to be honest with you.
Don't talk about Bucky.
I can't log. It's not letting me log in, which is very annoying.
That's interesting, because I have logged in.
I could probably check it on my phone easier than the desktop website. It's just crap. Liberty Media, develop a website properly, for God's sake. Right, let's try F1 app. Why don't you hit me with your points while I try and load up?
I got 287 points.
Nice.
Max 72 points, doubled. Fernando Alonso 23, Sergio Perez 52, Nick De Vries 3 points.
Nice.
And Alex Albon, I lost 15 points, which is a shame because he was running in the points. And my team's Red Bull 98 points, Aston Martin 54, Lance Stroll with the 4th place.
Nice.
So yeah.
Cool. I am just looking. So how many points did you get? 280.
287, yeah.
287. I got 316.
Ooh, nice.
So Max got me 72 points.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso got me 23 points. Kevin Magnussen got me 2 points. Zhu got me 15 points, and Perez got me 52 points. You didn't have Perez, did you?
No, I did.
Did you?
I had Perez.
It was Albon. Albon screwed you over. And then I had Aston Martin and Red Bull as my two teams.
Yeah, there's a mine as well.
So, so I don't think I did too badly.
Fair enough,
which is good. I can also check. I'm going to try and see. So I've mentioned it once before, but my internal at work, we do a top 10 prediction. And so I can try and give you what my predicted top 10 was and how I actually scored. Formula One. I'm struggling to find it. Which is very good podcast content, obviously. I'm really struggling. All right, cool. It's because it's an internal website, so it takes a while to load up. But my results were. I got 112. Oh, I did not do well. Oh, wow. I got 2 right. No, I got 1 right, sorry. I got 1 right.
Max Verstappen, P1?
Max Verstappen, P1. And then, so you get points for, being slightly off. So you get, 70% points for being slightly off. So I got 1 right, which was Max in first. And then, 4th, I said Lance Stroll. 4th, I said Fernando Alonso, and obviously he finished 3rd. So because I was 1 off, I got some points for that. So I got 124 points. Overall, out of 81, I came joint 64th, which is pretty bad. Hard. Yeah, but you have to predict the entire top 10. But the person who got the most points, only got 212 points, which I mean is quite a bit higher, but he had Max first, Lewis second, and then somehow predicted Sergio Perez 5th.
Oh, good on
him. I mean, fair play. But nobody scored particularly high that round. It's just very interesting. It's just like a nice little top 10 prediction. But as you can tell, I didn't do amazingly well. But yeah.
Cool. Right.
So I don't think we have too much else to talk about on this episode. Oh my god, a big mosquito just came out of nowhere. Ooh, I need to. So it's become mosquito season here, and I hate mosquitoes. So yeah, I think. Oh no, he's disappeared behind a box. I'm going to lose him.
You go deal with that mosquito.
I will deal with the mosquito.
And we'll be back next week.
We will.
I guess we'll talk Drive to Survive.
Yes, we can. Oh, he's come back. We can talk Drive to Survive. I am very intensely watching this stupid animal. But we can talk about that. But also, I wanted to remind you that we were supposed to. It's coming closer. I've lost it in the blanket.
Oh, great.
We can talk. We'll also remember. This is completely unhinged. We need to talk about our suggested Formula One dream location, night race, whatever, in a city that it's never been to.
And also, who would you have playing Formula One drivers? What actor?
And what actor? Yes. So just a reminder that we need to have a think about that.
Sorted.
Yes, we do. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how on earth we try and fill that void. We might get some half an hour episodes as opposed to full hour-long episodes, but we will see. Do you want to take it away and wrap things up?
Yeah, okay, bye.
Wow, okay. I was going to be, a bit more professional.
No,
he says, running
listening.
Away from a mosquito.
If you want to follow us on our socials, follow us or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And yes, myself, Anish, and Jacob will be back next week to talk more F1 stuff. If Jacob hasn't caught malaria.
Yeah, if I haven't contracted malaria or some other mosquito-borne disease, I've completely lost it. It disappeared, and it's freaking me out. So I'm gonna go deal with that. Thank you very much for listening, guys.
Thank you all. All right, bye.
Cheers.